All right, we are here a day late, but that is only because I had some stuff going on last night. I had to recap the UFC show, but Sunday night, coming back for the post game of the 49ers Packers also gives us an opportunity to preview the game against the Lions. So it kind of works out decently well. Rod
But
is
not
back.
but not a dollar short though.
Yes, yes. But you know, I thought about it. I was like, well, if I know Rod, he's probably going to watch the Niners game again. He's probably going to watch the other NFC game pretty closely, and so he'll have some thoughts. So, a day late is okay. I think we're good. Even though we
Yes,
couldn't go right after they won, which was a very sort of like emotional victory for the 49ers.
it was very fortuitous for me because I watched the fourth quarter yesterday in the audience of the Ali Sadiq show. He's on stage, and I've got my phone on my lap. And if you know anything about Ali Sadiq, he references the elephant in the room. We're like 10 minutes from the stadium. Everybody is glued
Yeah,
to their
yeah,
phone
yeah,
trying to, because if you're like me, when I booked that show, no, number one, it didn't occur to me that we'd be playing Saturday night. And then two, I didn't think this game would be a game in the fourth quarter. I mean,
right.
it was bananas. So it was nice to be able to get to really, really watch it. Uh, I cannot tell you, it's crazy how relieved I felt when CMC scored that touchdown. It was I'm not gonna say I gave up because I don't really do that, but it was feeling pretty bleak there for a minute. I mean, it was just that game did not go the way I thought it was gonna go, especially offensively. We'll get into that
Yes.
though.
Yeah, I think it's the one thing where historically, right? Like if you are a 49ers fan and you have been a 49ers fan in sort of our age range, we are supposed to be guys who we're like, "Oh, we've seen Super Bowls before. We're not ones to get uptight in these kind of games." But you know what I realize? And a lot of it is just because there are folks who are, in their 30s
Mm-hmm.
who were really, not really paying attention to football in 1994 and 95.
Mm-hmm.
And so to them, the Niners haven't really won a Super Bowl in their lifetime. And that's fascinating to think about because when I
Mm-hmm.
was growing up, I was like, they're just going to win every
Yeah,
year.
every year, and it's almost like, which is kind of ridiculous on the other end, where you're like disappointed when they don't win a championship. Was my reality from like age 12
Yeah.
to, I don't know, 18. You went into most seasons expecting, to compete for
Yeah.
championships. It was just, which is also equally ridiculous. I mean,
Yes.
because literally their teams that have never been there, and we had such a run of again, like, you take what the Patriots out of it, most recently, and I mean, our run was kind of unprecedented
Yeah.
for the length, and the dynasty. It wasn't really I guess the Steelers, but yeah, we were good for a long time. So yeah, it is kind of funny to think about, a generation of people who don't know a championship. And then if you break it down even further, you're we really shouldn't be surprised that, a kid like Brock, is he just seemed kind of tight to me
Yeah.
yesterday.
You can
Um
tell the wet ball is like it's problematic for him.
yeah.
There was one play where he takes the shotgun snap, puts the ball in his left hand, wipes his right hand on the towel before he makes the throw, and the throw's bad. Like it's in his head. And Alex used to get this a lot.
Mhm.
Small hands Alex, right? Oh,
Mhm.
he can't play in the rain because he can't throw the football, can't throw wet football. whatever they need to do in the offseason to get Brock used to throwing a wet football, that needs to happen. I think they're going to be okay this weekend, so that will not be an excuse. And then the Super Bowl is going to be in Vegas, so there won't be a wet ball there if the 49ers actually do make it. But, you know, that Cleveland game, you just go back to that Cleveland game, and you're like, geez, like, you know, this guy's he's never thrown a wet football before, which he has. He has to. If he, you know, he's played 4 years of college football and all the high school years. But whatever it is, that you know, his accuracy is just way off. And
it's funny. I was talking to some guys who are former players, and they were saying just that. But they were saying that it's really tricky to replicate a wet football. You know, it's not just as simple as dunking a football in like a Home Depot bucket of water. Apparently, rain somehow is different. It's the wet is a different kind of wet. So, and I don't really even know what that means, but it's not as
slickness
simple.
Or something.
Yeah, I guess. But they say it's not just as simple as having him in training camp dunk balls and throw them. It's like you really need rainy and wet. You know, doing that on a summer day, it just doesn't replicate throwing wet footballs in the rain. I guess there's some kind of atmospheric thing that happens with the humidity in the balls when it's you know, because I know that you can feel the damp in the air here in the Bay Area when it's raining. The air feels different. It's just it's a different kind of thing, and I guess it is. I guess when you think about that, it's difficult to kind of replicate those conditions to practice them if you don't have them. And anybody who lives in the Bay Area, especially for the past 3 years, knows that it's more likely and not that it's gonna be drought than it's gonna be rain. We just haven't had a bunch of it. So yeah, and then you think about Brock growing up in Arizona, probably not much rain. I don't think that I don't know anything about Iowa, so I don't know how much rain there is. Now, when I think of Iowa, I think more of snow than I would of rain.
Yeah.
So then, you know, it's like, and then here, it's just not something that comes up until it does.
Right.
So,
you know, the Patriots and Brady, they had the deflate gate. We need to bring someone with like a microwave on the sidelines and
there
just
you go.
throw the footballs in there. Only Brock gets the microwave footballs, and and then,
exactly.
And then it's dry. But so, you know, you made a great point about this game and about Brock. And you know what has become an issue with the way that you critique Brock is that, or not you personally, but us or fans, is that what we fail to realize sometimes, because he has been so good, and you know, we had that MVP conversation earlier this year, is he's only had, you know, less, what is it, 20-ish starts, or maybe a little bit over 20 starts in his entire career. So young that this pressure is bigger than anything he's ever played in, obviously. I mean, you saw the television numbers for this game last night. Like, everybody was watching this game. And, you know, the problem is, and we've discussed this before, we probably more than anybody else, and I would say the Pats are probably right there, we hold quarterbacks of higher esteem than anybody else because of what we've seen. When you go from Montana to Young, you're basically seeing quarterback excellence from 1981 through 1997. And it's just like, oh yeah, just 16 years, you know, we saw nothing but really, really great quarterback work. So for Brock, young guy, second year, first year ends with a shoulder injury. He doesn't have a ton of reps under his belt in year 2. He has a fantastic season, and yet he's still the young guy going into this game. He's still the most, you know, the inexperienced guy going into this game. and you could see it. You could definitely see
Mm-hmm.
it in the beginning of this game. And now some of it is also, and he actually gave him a hat tip, Detroit's game plan, which was, really taking away the long ball and
Mm-hmm.
forcing him into checkdowns. And with this wet football, even his checkdowns were astray. So, I'm so happy. And the Ravens and the Niners kind of dealt with the same thing, which is first half for both teams kind of subpar per how they usually play in the regular
Mm-hmm.
season. And then you made the halftime adjustments, and the Ravens came out like gangbusters in the second half. The Niners did not, but you could see there was a little bit of a difference, and you could tell that they had figured some things out. And it was just about them against the clock. Were they going to have enough time?
Right.
And Green Bay was making plays, man. Aaron Jones,
Mm-hmm.
53-yard run. When, I will tell you, everybody should be thankful that I am not a general manager on the 49ers, because by the fourth quarter, I'd cut all of these players for next year. Jake Moody, he was off the team. Jake Moody was off the team by halftime. Ambry Thomas, he was gone. He was just out. And then Chase Young, not worth the money. Can't set the edge. Cleveland is better. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
how nuts I was going, because I was in a moment of like, man, is this team fraudulent? Like that word kept going through my
Mm-hmm.
mind, as this game is going on. Like, how is Green Bay outplaying them on their home field? Why are they slipping? Why is Green Bay's players not slipping? Is there a fraudulent aspect to this team? And what I sort of came back down to is some of the things that we've talked about all season long. Brock is still young. He's going to have to fight through some of this adversity that he's never really had to deal with. And the defense is a complete byproduct of being able to rush the passer, and Green Bay's
Mm-hmm.
offensive line was a monster yesterday. And those two things have been true all season long. 49ers defensive line, their pass rush has not faced a bunch of Green Bay offensive line units. And that you could tell they finally started to break through a little bit in the fourth quarter. And obviously at the end of the game, when they forced Jordan Love into that sidearm pass, that was he threw it into three guys. There was 3 49ers and only one Green Bay wide receiver. So all in all, kind of how they, map this thing out, how they game plan this thing out, it comes to fruition, but you didn't expect it to be in the last 2 minutes of the game. I would have figured that they would have figured out this team far earlier, but they did not.
It's funny thinking back to your earlier point. It makes a lot of things with Brock make a whole lot of sense. We're talking about, these are 30 somethings who've been on the internets comparing him to Joe Montana, whom they never even saw play.
Nope, they never saw him.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, which again, for those of you youngsters that don't know, Joe Montana was clutch in Middle Pennsylvania. He was clutch
Notre
at
Dame.
Notre Dame. He was clutch at Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl with the flu.
Chicken soup on the sidelines.
He was clutch here from the catch on. So when you compare anybody to Joe Montana, the conversation for most clutch player in league history, the conversation starts with Joe Montana. It literally is Joe Cool. I mean, It's that you want to talk about it being a persona. And I worked in a high stress business for a long time, and having leaders who are cool under pressure makes all the difference in the world, because most people aren't. Most people, when shit gets thick, they panic. And there's nothing worse than working under somebody who is shitting their pants when the shit is hitting the fan. It's awful. It is so cool when the person in charge that you're looking to is like, "Hey man, we got this."
Yeah.
It makes a difference. So one, I don't think that it is a condemnation or diminishes Brock at all that he had a little lemon booty,
Yeah.
and then and the wet ball is a problem. But I believe that all of these are learning experiences, and I really do believe he'll be better next week for his experience this week.
Yes. Yes.
I don't do a lot of criticizing of Kyle Shanahan. I think he's a genius. I don't know about 30 pass attempts. 39 pass attempts seems like a lot.
Yeah.
I just don't. And we weren't, but if you want to tell me we weren't being really effective, their average stop on our run plays was like 1.4 yards. After 1.4 yards, and ours was like 4.5 damn near. I mean, we could not get stops in the run game, which was really frustrating. And then the whole damn thing, whoever the interviewer on the sideline said, Kyle specifically said one of the things that frustrated him was the cleat length, and he told everybody to change to the longest cleat they had.
Yeah.
And still in the second half, we're slipping and sliding all over the place. Like we're playing on a completely different surface than Green Bay is. That was just the height of frustration. But all that being said, I got this whole list of negative stats here. But when the chips were down, those dudes came up big. And I mean, that is overarching what I take away is CMC, Dre, Bosa, Warner. Those dudes made plays when the chips were down and we needed plays made. Yep. So that, overall the takeaway. And again, another thing that the internet frustrates me is, yes, Brock had a great last drive, but why y'all can't acknowledge that he was like ass for 3 quarters?
You can blame that one on David Lombardi, our guy Lombardi. He had the tweet at the end of the game about how only Joe Montana does this or something like that, which was the last drive. And then it got aggregated by one of the athletic accounts. And so, Nick Wright is retweeting it going like, gosh, this guy has no idea what football is and blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
But here's the problem with Lombardi. And I don't have a problem with Lombardi. I would rather read Barros than Lombardi. Mm-hmm. Lombardi is a numbers guy, though. He uses those numbers and he's really smart with those numbers. Lombardi was Jimmy G's biggest fan as well. Yeah. That's so, he would overlook certain Jimmy G things, almost in a sense to be an apologist sometimes, which I know infuriated the fan base. Mm-hmm. But you have to acknowledge. And I think the 49ers fans, me being one of them, were so afraid of what was going to happen if Brock shit the bed in this game. Yeah. Because the national story, which is kind of weird in the sense that, the underdog Caucasian quarterback is usually so celebrated by the national media as like, the great story. And, you don't often see the same love for athletes not to bring up an old 80s adage,
right.
The great white hope or whatever. But, usually what Brock is doing is just universally celebrated. Mm-hmm. But there is a slice of the national media who needs to be proven right that they did not miss on this guy when they evaluated him 3 years ago. And so they're just rooting for him to fail. And I just did not, this happened in 2016 Warriors when the Cavs came back down 3-1. I desperately wanted the Warriors to win that championship because then they would have gone down as the best team in NBA history because they went 73-19 and 73-9. Sorry. And if they would have finished it, mm-hmm. but I would have I was okay with them losing because, LeBron was on one and he suckered Draymond into getting kicked out of that game. But even worse than losing that was having to hear the national media and the fan
Narrative.
base
Mm-hmm.
clown the Warriors from losing the 3-1 lead. Like, that was even worse. And that was what I was like, just so sad about, more so than even losing the championship. So here with Brock, I was just like, I cannot even think about the crowing from some of these people if he does not win this game. Now, maybe that still happens. We still have a game next weekend. And if we are so lucky to get out of that one, then you have a Super Bowl. And they can still, they can still change the goalposts on him and still get that out.
There's
But
still plenty of beds to shit. So
yes. Going back to your Montana thing, and I find this so fascinating. This is why I subscribe to The Athletic, right? This is why I read, I pay money to read the best reporters and the best analysts on in the Bay Area. There was in the last drive, and there's that famous Super Bowl story with Joe Montana telling Harris Barton, "Hey, look, John Candy is in the audience." During the most dramatic drive in Super Bowl history, and Harris Barton just going like, "Dude, like, I can even think about this, right?"
yeah.
And so, who that guy was yesterday was Trent Williams. It was Trent Williams. Now, I don't know what Brock said in the huddle. He was not quoted as saying whatever he said to maybe calm the team down. But Trent basically said in the huddle, "This may be the last time we are in this hole together, guys. So every play, like, your best." And I thought that was fascinating. Like, your best player is Trent Williams. We've said that all year long.
Oh, yeah.
As far as per his position, he is the best player on the 49ers. To have him lead, you don't usually hear offensive tackles being the leader in the huddle. So I thought that was fascinating. And I think most people would say, "Oh, that Brock's not alpha because he's not the one saying." The dude is so young. Like, he
doesn't have the tenure to be able to, he's just finished his first full season as an NFL quarterback.
Yes.
Who is the guy who is that guy on a team full of all pros? I mean, you could say maybe Jordan Love is, but he's like a vet. He's like 4 years in.
Yeah.
This is like his first, starting season, kind of like Brock. But I mean, he's been around. He might be the most tenured guy on that offense.
Yeah.
When you look around, okay, maybe Aaron Jones, but still, he's more tenured than like Brock is. I mean, it's different. It's just different. And just to piggyback on your point about Lombardi, the thing that frustrates me about him is he's a dude that will in a second drop you're being intellectually dishonest.
Yes.
When he's always intellectually dishonest. What are you talking about?
He gets caught up. He definitely gets caught up.
So yeah, but like you said, I concur with The Athletic. The $12. I can't think of any other subscription that I have that gives me the bang for the buck that the $12 I spend on. And I think this year I got a $6 for the entire year during the Black Friday thing.
Yeah, they have deals left and right.
Yeah, so I mean, come on, man. 50 cents a month. Come on, man. You cannot beat it.
So to put a cap on this kind of like Montana thing is what I hope, and I think what a lot of Niners fans hope is that, because Joe was a really young quarterback when the 49ers won their first Super Bowl too, but he played with those guys for 3 years, and in that third year is when they kicked it up into gear. He didn't play his rookie season much until the end, but he went through the trials and tribulations with those guys. Now Brock is thrown onto a really good team, and it's just like, okay, here are the keys, don't screw it up. And that's kind of the idea with Brock, right? With Joe, it's like Joe's growing as this team just gets better and better and better. So by the time Joe is in his third year, he's been with those guys. He's been in the foxhole with those guys. So it's a little bit different, but he was also young by, winning his first title. So what my hope is for Brock is every important game is just another notch on that experience belt for him. This is last year. He got through this round as well. He also got through that wild card round. So he got to, to take those steps. And then he didn't really get a chance to finish that NFC Championship game. But still, they were not the favorites going into that NFC Championship game. The Eagles were at home, so that was their game to lose, essentially. The Niners are the ones with the bullseye this year.
And it's funny, I keep going back to the 30-somethings because that point you made is really poignant for a lot of reasons. And what a lot of people won't realize, and I've looked, and I don't see much written on the fact that the NFL is a completely different thing than it was.
Oh yeah,
in the 80s, because the way I remember it, and maybe I misremember it, the Giants were way huger in this market than they were, like the juggernaut in this market, in terms of like media coverage and just their history. They weren't necessarily the best, especially throughout the 80s. They weren't necessarily the best team, but they were the most significant team. And then the 49ers, even though they were winning championships, I don't know. I guess maybe because of how big for me in my life KMBR, the flagship, was, it just seemed like the Giants were omnipresent.
Yeah.
And then I'm in the East Bay, so I'm an A's fan, and then the Raiders were this whole other especially in the East Bay, the Raiders were this whole other thing that it was like a cult basically.
But they were also gone for a large part of when we were younger.
Still, they had such their idea, which is a whole other story, and that's a story that has been told. Their Raider culture was so entrenched and immersed in being an Oakland resident.
Yeah,
it was like, again, that's like something that I've never experienced it. Well, the closest thing to that, which is even crazier, is like LSU football in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. That's like a whole state. The whole state is like it literally. It's like, you talk about Friday Night Lights in Texas. Literally on Saturday afternoons, the entire state stops for LSU football. Little kid, it is not, when they talk about recruiting advantages and stuff, it is true. The little kids grow up wanting to play. You talk about wanting to go to the NFL. Yeah, I guess that's a dream too. But little kids grow up wanting to play for LSU. I mean, it's just a different type of thing. And the 49ers, they just weren't that for a long time. It took a long time. And then the profile of the NFL is completely different. For a long time, the NFL was kind of like a ragtag organization, and just, kind of just out there. It wasn't really, it was definitely not the global juggernaut that it is now back in the 80s. It just wasn't that.
Well, I'll tell you what it was. The Giants, if you're KMBR, you have the Giants from at least games from March all the way through October. So there's so much of an inventory of product. And then the Giants, I don't know exactly when this happened, but I think the Giants have like invested into the radio station or something. So they were always going to get first priority. They even would get first priority over Warriors playoff basketball, mm-hmm. which caused the Warriors to leave and go to a different station. But in the 80s, when we were growing up, the 49ers were on KGO. They were not even on KMBR.
Mm-hmm. So like you say, the entire format was built around Giants baseball. So all of the talk shows, from morning up till game time, where it was like Giants talk, basically. And then you had the games. And then afterwards, it was call in talking about primarily the Giants. And that was, for me, that was what I listened to. I had sports radio on all day. So it
Oh
was
yeah.
either
I would wake up to it and fall asleep to it.
it was either KNBR and I'd listen to the Giants talk, or I was on KSFO and it was A's talk. So
Yep.
it was, which is just a different baseball just held a different place in society. Then it's different.
Day-to-day sport versus
yeah,
week-to-week sport.
yeah, like you said, like from March to October, that was what daily is what you talked about. I mean,
And we'll go back to this game, but I'll tell you when it switched. It switched with Montana and Young and the debate between who should be the starting quarterback. That's when it switched, and there was an overdrive of sports talk radio where you could talk about that stuff over the off season because it was drama. It was for your diehard Joe Montana fans, it was Montana is proven.
It was inconceivable that you would consider anybody other than
you trusted him, you had faith in him, and Steve Young was this different style of quarterback. And back then, before Young became Young, he would probably just look at Jerry, and if Jerry isn't open, he was tucking that football and running. That's just the style in which he played. And so fans were not comfortable because he would throw the untimely interception, or he was so badly wanted to succeed in fumbling and those kind of things. And, that was just more ammo for the Montana fans and Montana himself. Montana didn't want to leave. He this was his town. This was his team. And so to have this guy underneath him, and, there's a story in The Athletic about Steve Young coaching his daughters in flag football, and his daughters are supposedly really good athletes. So he helps coach their flag football team. And in that story, they told the same story that I told on this show before, where Young was doing a public speaking thing at a Mormon church, and my friend was Mormon. And he's like, "Do you want to go?" I was like, "Yeah." And my parents are like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, Mormon, whatever. I just want to see Steve Young speak. Like, that's why I wanted to go. And so he says this story that, he was invited over the Montanas for Thanksgiving. And in the way that I remember it, it was Thanksgiving. And the way that Steve retold it, it was Christmas. So whatever my memory, his memory, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, when Joe's introducing Steve to the family, one of Joe's daughters goes, "Oh, Daddy, is this the guy that you hate?" at the dinner table. Right. So imagine, breaking the, just the breaking bread with the kids giving out the truth bombs. Right. So, but that's when
that's Daddy, let's go to the replay
with kid and play. So that long story short, comparing Brock Purdy to Joe Montana is not great. So if you do it, if you do it, I want you to allow, because you're just setting Brock up for failure. Allow Brock to get some of these big games underneath his belt. And, down the line, 10 years, if Brock has a couple Super Bowls, then naturally you sort of make that comparison because of what has happened in the past. It happens with every single team. Like, imagine how many people, are Cowboys fans, lifelong Cowboys fans, and you got Dak, and everyone's like, yeah, Dak puts up great numbers, but he's no Troy Aikman. Like, I imagine that is happening in Dallas, right?
I mean, and that's frustrating because when you look at Troy Aikman's numbers, they're not very impressive, but they aren't. You really did have to be there for the context of what Troy Aikman was asked to do. He was not asked to be Dan Marino in that offense. He was, and Troy Aikman even says it. Emmitt Smith ran that engine. He was the engine that made those Cowboys. Him and the playmaker
Yep.
are the guys that really made that offense run. And you know, and Troy Aikman did his job and is a Hall of Famer, rightfully so, even though his numbers don't really stack up with his contemporaries. But
Yeah.
he was a great player, and he won 3
Don't
championships.
tell Cowboys fans this. A little bit game manager ish in
Oh
some
yeah,
instances. That
for
that
sure.
he was called upon to make some big throws, but even even in their biggest wins, he wasn't necessarily bombs away and
He wasn't on my
it was
backboard
Emmett.
guy.
Yeah, it was Emmett.
Not
Emmett was the most valuable player on that team.
And we saw when he held out, you know, the difference. I mean,
Yeah.
he was the guy on that offense above, and I think Michael Irvin was kind of Draymond-ish in the fact that he's one of those guys, kind of like Sapp, that won championships everywhere from the time
Yeah.
he was, you know, in Pop Warner through college into the pros. And I'm one who believes in that kind of pedigree. I don't think it's just luck
Yeah.
that everywhere that these guys show up and then championships show up. I'm not one that believes that's luck. I think that it's something to what those guys and he was a bad boy. Let's not get that twisted, but he was their spirit animal. Was Michael Irvin, which is a scary proposition.
But when Shaq finally won the NBA championship with the Lakers, I was so happy because I was a Shaq guy. I just loved his personality. I still love him on Inside the NBA. I get a kick out of him. He's such the most giving person. I remember Tom Tolbert said, when he was in Orlando, he was at a Walmart and Shaq just shut the place down and like bought everything for everybody in the store. That's how Shaq was, right? And so, but Shaq had this one quote when he was struggling early in his career with, winning the whole thing. And he's like, I won everywhere except for college and the NBA. It's like, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, no, you're 100%. The getting back to the actual game that happened, and I'm actually glad that we made some of these tangents and comparisons because, for you and me, we are trying to get back to a feeling that we had in the mid 90s. That's why we root so hard and critique so hard and follow so closely is you're just chasing this feeling that we maybe took for granted when we were younger. And now it's like, okay, like this team is good enough to get back there. I want these, my spoiled 20-something-year-old kids who are like, oh, yeah, Giants won 3 World Series. Warriors won 4 championships. What about the Niners? What are the Niners? Like, you lucky guys. I never saw any championships except for the 49ers when I was growing up. But I want to, you want the younger fan base to feel what we felt. And also to make up for 2013 and 2019 because it was unfathomable to us that the Niners were ever going to lose in the Super Bowl. And then they lost those 2 games. And so he kind of was like, oh, okay, like this is a little bit different than what I'm used to. So I feel like we're chasing, this feeling a little bit. And, I don't know. I would say that that 2013 Kaepernick team, that was probably the closest I felt to like, oh, this is the good old days again. And they just met up against a boss team who, got out to a big lead and they played catch up the rest of that game. So this team since 2013 is, I think, our best shot. Or was that the 2012 team? I always forget. I always get the in football, because the years cross over. I always get the year wrong. But that team was an excellent team. And one of the frustrations for me is that Frank Gore never got that ring, right? The ultimate 49er. Well, Frank Gore is back with the organization. Like, let's finish the job here because they have a talented team. But at the same time, you run up against some ghosts, because who are the two teams left on the AFC side if you can get past Detroit? It is the team that you lost to in 2012 and the team that you lost to in 2019. So there are lots of narratives that can be created, and that's what's great about the Super Bowl is you can create a narrative and create here's things that are going to happen. If the Niners can get past Detroit, they're going to be ghosts of Super Bowl past stories for them. And so I'm glad we kind of went down that rabbit hole of memories, because that's where my mind goes when we get to this time of the year. I don't think about us losing in the Super Bowl, or us or Alex Smith and company losing in the NFC title game. Like, I think about 1989 and 1990 and 1984 because I lived it. So this team, we've been saying it, is a little bit something different about this team. And the only thing that they hadn't faced all year long, and Nick Bosa, who I find to be like the smartest kind of meatheady-ish guy
exactly.
out there, like, the guy's like, hey, all of our wins were like blowout wins, and all of our close games were losses. So we needed this game. They needed the adversity. They needed to be able to achieve, to get over that hump, for Brock to get that comeback drive, for Shanahan. That stat is hopefully dead. The fourth quarter, down in the fourth quarter, Shanahan teams can't win games. Like, that stat is finally dead. So I think that is important, in us sort of expecting and holding them accountable to the great teams that we've seen in the past. That's what we do. You have to do that with an organization like this, because it's not, now the Lions are going to be a little bit different, right? They haven't been here into the NFC title game since 91. Previous title championships is like the 50s. So like, they're measuring against something completely different. If we flame out in this championship game, I think to a lot of us, it's kind of going to be a failed season in a sense.
So yeah, we, feel free to go ahead and let's blow these dudes out if that's what I think we did the whole comeback thing. Now let's go out there and stomp these dudes. I mean, in looking ahead to that game, I just, it's the same old story. It's the same thing that I said going into this game. There is a scenario where Gibbs and Montgomery are able to establish a run game, and they're able to get sustained drives on us and get points, and then put us behind. And then if we get behind, the difference is, Detroit's defense isn't really great. They can, if we find ourselves in obvious passing downs, they do have advantage again, because everybody does against us, and straight drop back pass situations. Because I keep saying it, and it's not a hot take, that outside of Trent, our offensive line isn't very good. They can and they are a very good run blocking unit for the most part. They have their problems, as we saw on Saturday, but can't be in obvious passing downs, because that is not good for us. But if we can get our play action going, if we can get our run game going, and we can give Brock time and not have, Aiden Hutchinson in his face, we should be able to carve up their secondary. I mean, so then at that point, it's like, how do we want it? Do we want to run it down their throat? I'm at the point where I want to see CMC get 30 touches a game. I just think he's the most dynamic offensive weapon in the league, and we should use him as such at this point. I get trying to limit him to get him through a 17-week season to 20 touches. That's great. But in situations like this, it's literally balls out. You're gonna rush Josh Allen. You're gonna run Lamar. You're gonna, if you're not gonna do it now, then when are you? Because these are the games that really, really matter. So I hope to see that. I hope Debo is fine because it's clear, and you see fans say some of the silliest things. You could just see that the game plan was built, large part of it was built around Debo because we started when he was out. We started trying to run Ray McLeod and Jawan Jennings out there in the Debo role, which they ain't Debo.
Yeah.
But by the same token, nobody has multiple game plans for injury contingency. And two, if you got Debo Samuel, why wouldn't you build a game plan
Yep.
around getting him the ball? I mean, he is one of, again, I keep saying it, and I don't think it can be refuted. He's one of the 5 best players in the league with the ball in his hand. He's a difference maker. And there's nobody quite like Debo. And you see play teams. We saw it today with the Bills and Diggs. When you've got these elite athletes, more teams are starting to try to use them like Debo, putting them in the backfield, getting them the ball on screens, getting them the ball on end arounds. It makes sense if you got players like Chase and Jefferson and Diggs and Debo. That if you got guys like that, you don't want to be limited to just getting them the ball out in the X spot. You want to put pressure on the defense that they got to worry about this dude wherever he is on the field. You got to get eyes on him because he can break the game. So I don't have a problem with Kyle consistently building game plans around Debo. And I don't believe that Debo is like faking these injuries. I mean, that hit on the shoulder looked legit to me. I don't think that he's like a diva or something who's faking these injuries. I think it's unfortunate, and I hope he's back this week. But yeah, it's a difference. It makes a difference when he's not in there.
Maybe we take him off kick return coverage. Just
Well, again, I understand the thought of that. We're gonna put Ronnie Bell back there.
well, and also Ray is himself just coming back from injury. So
yeah, so I mean, to me though, it's like in these important games, giving Debo more touches is not a bad thing. But like you say, it is a risk.
Yeah.
Having those dudes firing down there, with at full speed is not a I mean, it's a risky proposition. There's no question about that.
What did you see out of Detroit today that makes you a little worried for the Niners? Because and I'll preface this by saying, if you sort of look at football as it's a battle of your line, it's a battle of the offensive line versus defensive line. Green Bay should have won that game yesterday. If that is sort of the way that you measure, success or whatever. And I don't think the Niners will be able to have another game, at least defensively, where the line gets dominated and we expect them to play the style of football that we hope for. The Lions, they kind of play up tempo offensively and defensively. Like there's not, Lions are not winning a lot of games where they hold teams to a low number of points. They're outscoring teams with, and that's kind of their backbone is, we're going to give up some points, but we have firepower on offense to score points as well. And that's kind of how they look, at least as far as I can see how I would look at their team.
Yeah.
So that kind of bodes well for the 49ers because they can get into this time of possession game that they love to do and just kind of methodically go down the field, and you get one stop and all of a sudden you're up 14-0, and then you get a stop right before half and you score again, then you get the ball. Like this is the Shanahan blueprint. But at the same time, Detroit has playmakers.
Yeah.
Amon St. Brown,
Mm-hmm.
Gibson, Montgomery. You mentioned those guys. What about the tight end? Is the tight end?
Yeah, Laporta. Yeah,
It,
he's back and
yeah,
he's a difference maker. Yeah, their offensive line is a concern, especially on the interior. That dude, Ragnow, their center, is like one of the best in the league. And that's been a weakness for us this season, is being able to control teams that are, you know, good on the interior, especially, Armstead is back. I really didn't get to like really like watch all his snaps to see. His numbers look decent, and we were okay. But yeah, that's a concern. Them being able to run the ball against us. I think this could be a Wilkes game with the coverages, because Jared Goff will give you the ball. He'll give you
yeah.
opportunities. He'll give you opportunities to take it from him. So yeah, I think this, just from, like you say, from a tempo standpoint, the way Detroit likes to play, um, it'll give us they they're a good matchup for us. I think that I think we could have a really big game, and I think that would be good going in to a Super Bowl. Coming out of a shootout kind of situation would be good for us, and I think we can. I think we've got the firepower to do it, and I would love to see Brock come off of this game and have like a big game, one of those games like that they've come to be signature Brock games.
Yeah.
The high passer rating, high efficiency, um, you know, just distributing, and high completion rate, all of that. Not no Put all of the kind of struggle, lemon booty kind of stuff away.
I'm screaming at this dude.
Yeah.
Use your feet. Get out of the pocket. You feel this pocket closing on you. Like,
Yeah.
step to the side, step up. You may not be able to hit that timing route that you're desperately trying to hit, but give yourself more time. Let your guys free themselves. And so, but yeah, he was trying to run the Shanahan, playbook, and they were hurrying him up in moments where he thought he had something. So,
Yeah.
the other thing, and I guess let's start talking about MVPs, because my MVPs, I think on defensively, our MVP is probably the same in Dre Greenlaw.
Mm-hmm.
But offensively, you had CMC with the 2 touchdown runs, and he did break one. He could be anybody's offensive MVP, but like you said, they didn't really go to him early on.
Mm-mm.
And I noticed that there were times late in the game where he looked tired. And I was like, Shanahan does not trust JP in this game to take even one snap.
Mm-mm.
This is not happening.
Nope.
CMC, you're gonna have to find another win here. And Kittle, the big play downfield. He did have a drop, but then he came back. Ayuk had a slow game until the end, where he caught that shoestring and he caught some tough third down catches. But my offensive MVP is JJ. That there were moments in this game where I was like, are the Packers kind of punking us? Like, they're kind of getting the Niners pissed off and getting them into little scuffles. And that one dude, I guess Simone Biles' husband, like, flopped so hard. Trent like gave him a little bit of a small shove, and he went flying.
Come
Just
on,
went
man. Yeah, out here flopping.
Yeah.
It's like at the NBA.
But they kind of got us out of composure a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see some JJ stuff, and on a couple of the Kittle plays, he's like blocking dudes all the way out of bounds, like not stopping. There was another one where he was blocking this one dude out of bounds, like near like the tables, like 10 yards on the other side of the out of bounds, and he just keep blocking them. And he sets the tone in that way, and he probably gets on the other team's nerves more than anybody gets on our nerves. But I think they needed that, because they were a little bit out of sorts composure wise, and they were getting, I think there was the penalty, there was the offsetting penalties where it was clear that the Green Bay guy kind of took a swipe, but I forget the Niners offensive lineman just kind of pushed first, or who was it? It was somebody just kind of like, somebody just like swipe. I think it was maybe Randy Gregory or somebody like swipe down was in the thing, and he got, so then they allowed the refs to offset the penalties. But I was just glad that JJ was still JJ because they needed it. They needed that toughness. They needed that, like, get underneath the skin of the other team. And he had a couple of catches that were necessary. Brock threw like a moon ball, kind of a heavy ball that he came down with. And you just saw like he was going to make his force known in this game no matter what. And they needed that big. So I'm going with JJ.
Yeah, I can't argue that. He is a tone setter, like you say. And I mean, there was some talk on Facebook about, we need to get him the ball more. I mean, come on, let's be realistic. Easy. We got 4 5 all pro ball carriers if you include Juice this year, which was great to see him get an all pro nod. But yeah, we don't need to get Juice the ball anymore. Yeah. I mean, when you got CMC and Debo and Ayuk and Kittle, and I keep saying that it's ridiculous the amount of touches that George Kittle gets.
Yeah.
On this team. Don't be telling me that Juwan Jennings or Eli Mitchell or Jordan Mason need to be getting more touches. So who are you taking them?
Yeah.
Who's getting less touches?
Shanahan showed us. CMC? He showed us what he was going to do. CMC staying on the football field. He's not even getting a blow. They needed him. And it's not just to run the ball, it's to not screw up anything else. And it's so that Brock.
That is such a huge point, is that you can count on Christian to make the right play. And if you throw Christian the ball, you look at the stats, you throw Christian the ball, Christian is not going to drop the ball.
Yeah.
He's going to catch the ball. If you give him touches, he's going to get you positive yards. He's going to make, and this was something I saw way back in training camp. And I know they're not in pads on training camp. That dude does not lose yards. He is going to make something out of nothing. If the blocking is shit, Christian will get yards. He just does it. It's like he falls forward for
it's like his favorite thing is to find out that a defensive back is trying to tackle him, because he ends up on top of the defensive back every single time.
Yeah. I found that I took that as disrespect. Yeah.
He's like, you are the one who is trying to, I've already gotten through the linebacker, and now I get you. I'm just running you over. And that's kind of his mentality.
He is so fun to watch. And I remember, I'm a Cal fan, so I couldn't stand Christian McCaffrey at Stanford, but I respected his game because he was just so good. And it was crazy. I don't know which one it is, if it's Eisen or SVP, who talks about how, unbelievable it was how Jim Harbaugh made Stanford a physical football team. And, Christian McCaffrey was one of those guys. And it's still sometimes I got to pinch myself that he's like a 49er. I know. He is.
You take him for granted.
I mean, he is great. And I am an avowed Frank Gore lover. I mean, Frank's my guy. And so is Craig to another extent. He's like an OG.
Yeah.
Like Frank was like, when I was like in my prime, Frank was the guy.
If Roger Craig didn't fumble against the Giants in 91 for us, then he's probably even more well remembered, but that is held against him, unfortunately. You know who else that should be held against? Bubba Paris, because he just whiffed. Like Lawrence Taylor just went through him. And Lawrence Taylor's going through everybody, but still, Bubba just once. Can you just, but anyway, Bubba's beloved. Bubba's
but Christian is like right in the prime of his career, and he strings together a couple more years like this one, um, he will be, in all, and if we're able to, get a championship or two, he's gonna be a Hall of Famer, I think. I mean, he is, and he'll be in the conversation. I have no disrespect to Hugh McElhaney or the old timers. I never saw Joe Perry or Hugh McElhaney play. I don't even think I've seen any tape of those
Yeah.
dudes. So I don't have any context for them. So for me, Frank is the best running back in 49er history. And Christian has the talent to put himself in that conversation. He is just so impressive.
Yeah,
So
we
impressive.
talked about that before the season. We gave our like Mount Rushmore of 49ers running backs. If you want to go to bspnmedia.com, you could click on the blog and we have our thoughts on that here. And that was even before the season. And Christian then goes on to have like one of the best 49er running back seasons of all time this year. So, okay, as we head to Sunday, Niners and Lions, there is the thing that I'm worried about mostly with this game is just the kind of the underdog story of this Lions team. I imagine nationally, a lot of people want to see the Lions win just because that's the cuddly story because of their history. I don't give a crap about it. Maybe if they were playing
If we
another
weren't in
team,
it, I
yeah,
probably would be rooting for them.
If it was Dallas and Detroit,
Yeah,
I
oh,
might
absolutely,
buy a Lions hat if it was Dallas and Detroit.
absolutely. Yeah, because
But
that Honolulu blue is fire. I like that. That
I've talked to a few Lions fans, and I think they are taking this game as we've had our heart broken so many times. We don't want to get too excited, and at the same time, we weren't necessarily supposed to be here. So even if we lose, we kind of won the season anyways. Um, and that can be like a dangerous kind
yeah,
of team, like the team
absolutely.
that is just like, we got nothing to lose here. Like we already won. Why don't we just keep this thing going? So there's something that, and if you remember 2 years ago, we opened in Detroit, I think,
Yeah,
and we were up like
big.
big time. And they scored like 16 points in the fourth quarter and made it somewhat of a closer game.
Yeah, it really is like a referendum on when people are talking about pull your starters and not finish not finishing the game. That's the game I always think about is that became a contest again when it looked like it was over.
Yep.
So yeah, I am, I'm glad we got the bye week. I don't subscribe to this foolishness that, see rust. I don't buy that. But I do this. I would prefer to play them here than in Detroit
Yeah.
because I don't want any part of that nonsense back there. I mean that is bonkers. The environment that they've created the last 2
Oh
weeks.
yeah. Oh yeah. In in
Yeah,
in in my back pocket, you know what I have in my back pocket of hopes? Jared Goff's going to take a sack that he is going to kind of fall into. He's going to throw some balls that the Niners are going to be able to make plays on.
we got to make the plays though. We
And the
gotta make them pay.
defense has to make the plays. He's going to hit some big throws too because
Yeah,
he is talented.
yeah,
But there are going to be opportunities that he's going to give us, especially if we can. I mean, you saw late in this game against Tampa, the reason why Tampa gets a couple of extra shots is because Goff has to take sacks
yeah.
and in inopportune times.
He's gonna
And
do that. He's gonna
yes,
do that, and he's gonna throw you the ball. Now you have to make the play. Because if you don't, I've seen it too many times this season. The defense drops a pick. I think that even happened today. You drop a pick, and then Amon St. Brown goes for
yes,
20 plus. It's just you have when he gives you opportunities, you have to take them.
yes.
So yeah, I think we can. I think I don't think St. Brown is a great matchup for anybody, but
No.
Tavares Ward has been great this season. So I feel confident in him. Those other guys, like you say, I don't disagree at all with taking that 20 jersey and be like, hey man, you need to you
But
need
by the
to
way, like one of my worries was Jair Brown. What happened? Why was Logan Ryan playing so many downs in this game? Just
I
like
think that
he was olaying all these I'm like, what is this guy doing on the field?
I think they, all of that, the Olang being said, I think they trust the fact that he's played in a bunch of big games.
Yeah.
Those Patriot teams, he's got. I wouldn't be surprised if, haven't looked it up, but I wouldn't be surprised from a playoff standpoint. He might be the most tenured player on our team in terms of playoff starts. So I don't know, but he might just be cooked though. So I don't know. I don't know. At a certain point, experience and talent, that then they passed each other, and there's always a reason why these dudes aren't on teams in October and November. I mean,
Yes.
it's not an accident. People don't generally misdiagnose. I guess, you want to say that Joe Flacco still had whatever left. Whatever. Okay, but
Deshaun Watson may have been the only person in Cleveland rooting against Joe Flacco, by the way.
Yeah, but it was I'm just saying though. Logan Ryan looked kind of done to me.
So yeah, on Inside the NBA, I mentioned Shaq already, but they play this game called Who He Play For. And Chuck has to take
never knows anybody.
He has to take a random guy who's been on 20 teams, and he's got to figure out. So they did one with Stephen A. Smith. When Stephen A. Smith, they did the ESPN and TNT thing together during that in-season tournament. And so Stephen Smith had to play Who He Play For, and he was just like mad. Like he's like, can't believe you guys are killing me on this show. But he didn't know any of these guys either. But I almost felt like we have to play a game of our own sometimes in these games, because I'm looking at the numbers on the back of these jerseys. I'm like, wait, who is that who missed that tackle? And then I would look, it's like, oh, that's Logan Ryan. Why is he even in the game? Like, when you don't know the numbers of the guys who are on the replay in the camera angle, like that's kind of bad. Like if you and I watch the game and we go, wait, what number is that? Who is that? Oh, wait, why is he even playing? That's a bad thing. Like, I feel like, the team with the most number of those guys playing in the playoffs probably has the worst chance to win. And so
I remember doing that with Pittsburgh this year, and it's like our former friend Witherspoon. Like, he's still in the league?
Yeah.
He wasn't great when he played for us.
No.
But he's still banging around collecting checks. Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. All right, so we'll be back next weekend after Niners Lions. That game will be over by 6:30-ish our time. So I would rather go immediate, I think, after that game, just because it's important to kind of get the immediate reaction and emotion of that game, win, lose, or draw. So I want to thank you for being so flexible with your schedule while I've been doing the basketball stuff with the Twins.
All right, Garrett, I will get my NFC Championship t-shirt Monday, as opposed to running right to Dick's on Sunday night and grabbing it. Yeah, okay. I can take one for the team.
Yeah, no, but I really appreciate you being so flexible and so wide open to my schedule. And so hopefully next week we'll be able to have that opportunity to go right after the game. And I know the people like Shelvin, I know when we record late, Shelvin's like, guys, I got to get up early on Monday, man. You guys are killing me. But Shelvin, specifically for Shelvin, he's in the back of my mind when we cannot go exactly right after the game. So Shelvin, we will be here right after the NFC title game next week, talking Niners Lions, and then
hopefully with some apple cider in celebration
Yeah,
for
yeah.
our journey to Vegas for
Yes.
a Super Bowl. I have a really good feeling, and I had like a sick feeling, with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter,
Me too.
seeing it all kind of fall away, and the relief, I can't tell you the relief I felt when he made that. Well, both times when Dre got the interception, both interceptions, it was just like heaven. Those three plays, the two interceptions and the missed field goal, it all kind of comes down
Yeah.
to those plays. And when it's such a great story when you think that he's like out there on like a bum wheel, and he's saving the game for us. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it really, it to me, that's what being a fan is about. That's what grinding out all of these practices and games and win or lose for those moments are to me makes it all worth it.
I told you. Thank you, Big Dom, because you gave Dre
he
so much
balled up that picture like in the Rocky montage.
So you gave him so much inspiration
Hearts on fire.
for the end of this season. This dude has got something called Achilles tendonitis, which just sounds terrible, and he's able to play thanks to Big Dom. That's how he's getting his workouts in. He's just thinking about Big Dom. All right, so next week we'll be here after the game. Thanks to everybody. Have a great week. Good luck to everybody as you sit through and clench your fists and grind your teeth like we were doing this week. Hopefully it's a little bit easier. But hey, if we got to grind our teeth and clench our fist and get mad and it still ends in victory, it's going to be worth it. So for Rod, I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.